And welcome to Recovery Report Live, where we manage risk to recovery. We manage more than $1 billion of recovery right here at GlobalPro. The Recovery Report Live is about providing you important information you need as policyholders, specifically when you're dealing with loss and damage. And we are dealing with a lot of loss and damage right here in Florida, whether it was from Hurricane Ian or Nicole. Right now, as Nicole is moving through the state of Florida and heading north, it's important that you have all the information you need to make sure that you can recover as quickly as possible. And part of that recovery is making sure our community gets what it needs. And GlobalPro has been on the front lines for more than 10 years, making sure that we're not only helping our policyholders, but also helping our community, because we know what it takes to recover from something like this, a major disaster, a 1-2 punch to the state of Florida. There's definitely a lot to talk about. I want to get into it, but before we get into that, I want to obviously talk about the track. I'm no meteorologist, but it goes without saying that there is a lot to consider when dealing with this current storm. This storm is making a path up through Florida and impacting many, many different areas. It's important to understand that there are various different people that can help you through the process, and the only licensed individuals that can represent you at the onset of a loss are a public adjuster. So when you're making your claims, whether it's for Nicole or Ian, the individual sent out by the insurance company is not there for you. They're not representing your interest. There are many different licensed adjusters for independent adjusters, company adjusters that work on behalf of insurance companies, but again, they're not there for you. So making sure you have all the important information you need in order to properly and adequately respond to the insurance company's demands and walk you through the process is really important. But before we get there, let's talk about Nicole, right? Nicole is historical, right? She is certainly going to cause and create more and more damage as the storm moves, again, north and through the coastal areas of Georgia and the Carolinas. So all our eyes are on it. We're not out of this thing. We're just getting into it. Even before Nicole came on shore, it was already causing substantial structural damage to coastal properties. There was already, it's allegedly about 10 properties that were in danger of collapsing from Hurricane Ian on the east coast of Florida. But Nicole happens to be the first hurricane to hit the Florida Atlantic coast since 2005, and that was Katrina. It's also the first hurricane to hit the U.S. in November in nearly 40 years. The last one was Kate in 1985. And if that's not crazy enough, the Yankee hurricane of 1935 combines the two of those stats, meaning it was the last time a hurricane made landfall in November along the east coast of Florida. Since 1935, that's the last time we saw a storm like Nicole. This late in November, as well as a storm that is coming out of the Atlantic Basin and hitting the east coast of Florida. So some historical relevance there. It's certainly going to set certain records with regards to some of the damages it's going to cause for certain areas. There's more than 30 million people were under some type of storm-related warning heading into yesterday's landfall. 30 million people. We have first of a first since 1935, something hitting the east coast of Florida. The east coast of Florida this late in November, 30 million people under a storm warning. So certainly impacting a lot of people's businesses, impacting a lot of community associations and homeowners, a lot of evacuation plans. There is already some cause for concern. Like we mentioned, 11 structures already in fear of collapse because of Ian. Who knows how many more there are. We definitely saw, I'm sure if you were watching, and like I was, the Weather Channel and many different other media outlets, pouring on the drama and showing you the different other buildings that are collapsing into the sea. It's a dire situation for many of them. So the wind field was huge. It impacted up to 450 miles, right? That was huge. It extended out 450 miles. So while this storm may not have been Hurricane Ian or Michael in a category 3 or a 5, it was an extreme event because of the size of the area it impacted. You know, typically we see these storms like an Andrew, which was really packed in and was immensely strong, but it impacted a much smaller area and caused tremendous amount of devastation, obviously in the South Florida area. But this is a huge storm while not that strong as a Ian or a Michael or even a Katrina or an Andrew, it certainly packed a huge punch because of the huge area impacts, as well as one of the immediate focuses and concern is obviously the flooding. And when you have this much amount of water coming on shore in such a huge geographic area, the water really has nowhere to go but inward, and it's creating a lot of flooding inside the inland areas. And obviously flood is of concerns and coverage. We saw only 7% of Hurricane Ian flood victims actually had flood coverage. Small numbers. Same thing with, you had that up to Harvey as well as Katrina. So there's going to be a lot of leaning on the federal government for the funding program through FEMA, which is not an insurance claims process. FEMA funding is totally something separate and different and apart. It's for your uninsurable damages and loss. It's certainly not going to cover you for what your insurance would be taking care of, but the money's there, and we want to make sure that you know how to get to it if you need to make claims, and we'll get to that part here in a little bit later. Right, so more than 233,000 homes and businesses across Florida were without power at 7:30 this morning. So that is a huge disruption to business and to our daily lives. So over 30 million people under storm-related warnings or watches as of yesterday's landfall. And as of this morning, over 200,000 businesses and homes without power. I know that number has come down. I checked on a website that tracks this stuff. It was in the 160,000 range. But again, those numbers need to be checked to the field, and we'll see where that lands. But this wind field is huge. It's impacting such a massive area. We're continuing to track it, obviously, as it moves north. So make sure you keep your eyes on it, as we are, because while those that are already out of the thick of it and starting to plan your recovery, be careful. Make sure you're taking pictures. Make sure you're taking videos. Make sure you're collecting information about the current condition of your property today, right now, before you start to do anything. It's really, really important that you do those things. The process is going to take time. It's going to be extended because resources for insurance companies are already stretched so thin. All right, from Hurricane Ian, the projection, all right, as of October 4th for Ian was between $42 billion and $57 billion. Now we have Nicole dumping into areas in which are already part of that statistic and compounding the issue. Many commercial businesses, as well as community association, has what's called calendar deductibles. Many homeowners don't. Calendar deductibles are cumulative. So it's going to be a little bit easier to adjust those claims than you would be for a homeowner that may not have the benefit of a calendar deductible. Meaning that every single time there's an occurrence, you need to then exceed that deductible. So if you're a community association or business owner, look at your policy. Check to see if you have calendar deductible when you're making your claim. If you do, it's cumulative. If you don't, again, you got to start from $0. But now you have the difficulty of trying to distinguish between which storm caused the damage if you don't have that calendar deductible. Also, if you're in a flooded area, you have to distinguish between wind and flood. Flood from which event? All right, again, if you have anti-concurrent causation language in your policy, there's some pitfalls. You got to be very specific as to how you're making that claim. It doesn't mean you don't have coverage, but you do have to prove what is caused by wind versus what is caused by flood. And now you have, let's call it 4 different events. If you have both flooding in both events, plus wind in both events, and you don't have a calendar deductible, you're having to pick through 4 different claims in order to figure out where your coverage is in your insurance. Now, again, for those community associations out there, most in Florida will have a calendar deductible. The wind-related damages it's cumulative as it relates to your deductible, but you still need to be able to distinguish between what is the cause of your loss, and it's not wind-driven rain. If you have hurricane damage, you have hurricane damage. Stick to what you know. Write the word or the terms out of your brain, wind-driven rain. The insurance companies have perverted it to mean something other than hurricane. Don't fall for this pitfall within coverage and issues. Report hurricane damages. Stick to that. Make sure that you're only reporting that. Again, it's a tough situation. You already had 11 buildings that were in fear of collapse on the East Coast from Hurricane Ian. Now you have insult to injury here. You have Hurricane Nicole that came on shore, further causing additional damages in these areas, both wind and flood. Category 1 can't cause damage to windows, can't cause damage to roofs, so can tropical storm damages, flying debris, things like that. You need to be looking for it. You need to be documented. You want to make sure that you have it. Now, after Hurricane Ian, what we found is that within the first month, 65,000 claims were closed by insurance companies because they were allegedly below deductible. Now, the insurance company industry is going to argue that, well, because we have higher than average deductibles, people are increasing the deductibles to save money because insurance is outrageously expensive and because the legislator is not holding the insurance industry accountable, making them report the financials, so we have competitive free market here. But that's a topic for prior broadcasts and I'm sure future. But the real issue is 65,000 because they're below deductible. That's what the insurance companies are saying. It's really important for homeowners, business owners, community associations to make sure that you're doing your due diligence and documenting your damages. Don't just assume because you have a high deductible. Don't fall victim to deductible phobia. Write that out. Make sure you just focus on the task of ascertaining, determining the amount of your damages and focusing on that. Set aside the deductible issues for a later argument or an issue, all right? 7% of homeowners damaged by Hurricane Ian have flood coverage. That was the number for Hurricane Ian. Let's see who it is. Let's see what that number comes in out for Nicole. But again, that's concerning. There was significant flooding from Hurricane Ian. There's significant flooding from Hurricane Nicole in a much larger geographical area than even with Hurricane Ian, even though Hurricane Ian was a much stronger storm. Now, if you are a community association, you're tuning in and listening to this broadcast, one of the first things that you need to do to determine the extent of your damage is to understand what your insurable interests are. We have a great document that we have put together that analyzes the Florida Statute 718 that determines what is or isn't in the event of a covered casualty under your property or wind policy versus a flood loss. And in that matrix, it actually breaks down and gives you guidance. Now, this is subject to interpretation and your policy condition, your bylaws, and other things that may go to interpreting whether or not this is applicable to your situation. But generally speaking, this is how the Florida Statute 718 should be applied. And we encourage you to reach out to us. Let us know if you need this information. We have it available to you. You should have a coverage matrix in front of you when you're going through the process of determining the extent of your damages. Now, you're there to prove damages, but it's important to at least have some guide or path forward to trying to figure out where you should focus your energy. And that's what it's for. It's not the end-all be-all. Don't just look at it in a vacuum and just assume that that is the only thing that you need to consider when evaluating your coverage, because it's not. Your policy may have further limitations and exclusions that may be added to your policy that may prejudice you from these coverages that you should have been insured for pursuant to the statute. Now, that leads to a further conversation about what is your broker doing for you and how did they sell you insurance, or what did they sell you, and are you in fact compliant with the statute? If you are compliant with the statute, this metric should in fact help guide you through that process. But again, not the end all be all. Make sure you can reach out. Let us know what we can do to help you. We're here to help you. The phone number is simple, 855-487-7475, 855-487-7475, or check us out online at GlobalPro.com. Hit the resource section. There's lots of things that are there, including the Storm Center, where we're providing you all of this information and so much more that you need as a community association or business owner. Advanced payments. It's something that a lot of victims from Hurricane Ian took advantage of. I'm sure those from the victims of Hurricane Nicole are going to do the same. But be patient. Exercise some patience. The first area you should be looking at if you've suffered both wind and flood damages is your flood insurer for coverage for an advanced payment. Now, don't fall victim of demanding the amount of the deductible, which seems to be a practice for a lot of these flood adjusters, is to simply to kind of put you on ice while they complete the reports. They say, oh, well, at least I can get you the $25,000 for your deductible. Go ahead and fill these forms. Pump the brakes a little bit. Get some semblance, if not the actual cost of the mitigation efforts of your contractors that are out there cleaning up, that are mucking you out, that are pressure washing the area, that are doing the emergency services that are needed for your property, so that you can determine to the extent that you were damaged, right? You need to get the mud, the sand, the cars out of the parking or the lower ground floor areas. You need to remove all of that to actually do an analysis. Do you have structural damage? Do you have issues with your damages to your elevator? You need to get them pumped out. You need to get the elevator contractor into those pits to evaluate it. Get that information. Submit that documentation for that advance. I guarantee you it's going to be more than the amount of your deductible if you have substantial flood damage to a lower ground floor area. And it's better getting a couple $100,000 or maybe $100,000 than it is $25,000 or whatever the amount of deductible is. And it only may have taken you another 48 hours or 72 hours to get to that point. So pump the brakes on it. When we have a number of associations that we're dealing with after Hurricane Ian that wanted and were pushing for advanced payments from their wind insurers. Now, when you're told them pump the brakes on that, that's a longer process. The concern there is that you put together some reasonable order of the magnitude of your damages, but you're doing it somewhat without enough evaluation or inspections of the property. Particularly if you're a mid-rise or a high-rise building. It's going to take time to get through the units. But if you've done some substantial inspection of those units in the exterior property, then now's the good time to make that sort of demand and put together some reasonable order of magnitude or a ROM or some evaluation as to what you think the amount of your damages are, so you can prove that it's in excess of your deductible and that you are, without a doubt, in need of money, and the insurance company is going to be paying you dollars in excess of whatever your deductible is. Again, don't fall victim of sublimits for wind-driven rain. Make sure that you're only making damages for hurricane-related damages. Now, if you are pursuing some sort of funding from FEMA, make sure that you report it to your local office, your local agency on behalf of FEMA. I do not recommend you picking up the phone and calling into the call center. Go local, and if you go local, you're going to get a better customer service experience. You're going to get a better result, and you're going to walk out of there with more confidence about what you're getting and when you're going to get it and how it's going to be paid. This is for uninsurable issues. It's not taken as a deduction against your insurance claim or any of those things. That's definitely a hot button question we get from a lot of community associations and business owners. This is for uninsurable stuff. This is for landscape cleanup and other things like that. Go ahead, get your invoicing together. There's a lot of information. We have it again on our website, GlobalPro.com. Hit the resource section, check it out. It's right there. You need to take Social Security numbers. You need to take personal information with you in order to be able to register. If you are a manager of a community association, we recommend that you delegate this to a board member. A lot of times you may get reassigned during the process of dealing with a hurricane claim. Maybe the claim doesn't get resolved for, let's say, a good part of a year. You may move on to another property, and you're going to be constantly being pulled back there. This is the association's claim. It's not your claim as the manager. So, you may want to go with the board members down there to make the claims. But again, you want to be a facilitator, get them the information they need. But we do recommend that you allow the board members to make those claims. If you're a business owner, obviously collect the information you need. Go down there, whatever else. If you need assistance with that, let us know. Reach out to us. Again, 24/7. That's what we're here for. Now, we're seeing a lot of FEMA or flood adjusters demanding a lot of documentation be signed by policyholders in the wake of Hurricane Ian. There's going to be a lot more flood victims from Nicole. Be careful. If it's not required by the federal government, by law or the policy, it's not required. I've seen actually flood adjusters take forms that they've created and actually put government seals on them. I question that business practice. It seems as if it's not really a government form, that would be some sort of a malfeasance by that adjuster and probably not kosher, if you will, not the correct business practice. So let's make sure we actually look at those documents, that we analyze those documents, and make sure that it's required pursuant to policy. What is required after a flood loss within 60 days is a sworn statement of proof of loss, unless the federal government by order extends that period of time. In Hurricane Ian, they did that. For Florida victims of Hurricane Ian, that date started on September 26th. They extended it for 1 year. For in the Carolinas and Georgia, it was the 27th and 28th, respectively. So you had 1 year to sign and swear to the amount of your damages, and it must be on a actual NFIP form or a FEMA administrative form. Now, for Nicole victims, we don't know. Are they going to extend that period? More than likely, but as of today, for those people in the coastal areas, just south of Vero Beach where the Nicole came on shore, and as the storm moved forward, and when it exits Florida, we're going to get our date as to the date of the loss that FEMA is using and representative. And from that date forward, you have 60 days to do it. And that doesn't matter if the flood adjuster asks you for it or if the flood adjuster hasn't finished his inspection. It does not matter. The courts are clear on this. You have 60 days from that date of loss, no matter what the flood adjuster is doing. That's your obligation. So don't fall victim of that. If you need any more information about that, we've gone through a lot here today. I understand it. There's a lot going on right now. We're going to continue monitoring. I'm going to get back to answering the calls, having the Zoom meetings and the Teams meetings with all the property managers and business owners that we represent year after year, and many other things other than hurricanes. But right now, obviously, the attention is on those victims and making sure that they're getting what they need. So, but we're available to you, and we want to make sure that you're having that information. Again, check us out online at GlobalPro.com or reach out to us on the phone, 855-487-7475. Our adjusters and our insurance coverage expert team is on standby, waiting to answer your calls and respond to your needs. All right, so a couple other things we're dealing with, and I definitely think we're going to see a rise of this issue. Unqualified insurance adjusters on behalf of insurance companies. You heard me say it early in a broadcast about who these individuals represent. They don't represent your interests by law. Don't be jaded by thinking that, you know what, I'm going to let my insurance company do their thing first. And then I'm going to try to figure out what to do. It's a mistake many policyholders make, and we don't want to see you fall victim of it. So ask for licensing information. They're required to provide it to you. If that person's not licensed or registered in Florida to adjust claims, contact your insurance company directly and demand the same. If we as public adjusters are required to have licensing, so should those adjusters. And we want to make sure that they're held to the same standard. And we want to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do and to have the qualifications as they are required by law to do it. But again, they're not there for you. So don't be jaded in thinking that you need to play nice with your insurance company in order to get the best result. That's not the case. You have an obligation under a contract and by laws to do certain things. That's what you need to be most focused on. That's what you need to be making sure you're adhering to. Don't think that they're there for you. They're not. And same thing with your brokers. They're not there for you to adjust claims. They're there to sell you products. I know they have claims people on their teams. I know they advertise about these things. That's fine. They can ask you certain questions and give you certain kind of high-level answers to it, but they're not going to go out there and adjust a claim. They're not licensed to do that. Even if they have a licensed public adjuster on staff, they're not hired and cannot legally represent you as a public adjuster because they sold you the insurance. And I apologize for the coughing and the sore throat. Recovering from the flu over the last couple of weeks, and it's taking a toll on me, but we're still out here. We're still doing what we have to do and making sure that you're getting the information. As soon as my throat clears, maybe I'll get back to the normal broadcast as it is. So be careful. Make sure you're looking at those things. Make sure you're asking questions. They are required to give you that information, just like they're required to give you an estimate in support of whatever their evaluation is, even if it doesn't exceed your deductible. You still need to know what they estimated your damages to be. There's no hiding the ball here. There's no just blanket statement, right? You need details. You need information. So get it. Make sure you have that information. So if you're reporting this back to your unit owners, that you are reporting it from a place of knowledge and information. Now, if you question that evaluation or want a second look at it, let us know. We're here to help you. We can make sure we're doing that. Well, I know I've talked a lot, and I've talked a lot about a lot of important issues in a very short amount of time, but I wanted to make sure that all of our victims of Hurricane Ian and Nicole have the information they need. But more than anything else, I want to demonstrate to you the value that GlobalPro can provide to your organization, whether you're a community association or business owner. We're here to help you. Let us know how we can. Check us out online at GlobalPro.com. And if you haven't already, like us, follow us, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we'll see you next time, same place, right here on the Recovery Report Live.